Heseltine, and we can speak to him now. What did you make of that press conference? Something we haven't seen the like of before.
Well, I must say I never thought I'd live to see the day, but it was an impressive performance. But obviously the scripts had been coincided, and they were singing from the same hymn sheet, and you couldn't begin the process any other way. And so what one can only say is that there is a beginning, but I think, as all your commentators are indicating, the real problems have come when they have to govern, and everybody knows that they're facing the most momentous decisions, and there will be a highly sceptical press poring over every vote and multiplying out of all recognition every conceivable rumour and whisper and adverse comment, which of course always happens. It's there even when you have a one-party government, but this time you're going to get it from the extremes of two parties, and so I think the media are going to have a field day, and David Cameron and Nick Clegg are going to have the most extraordinarily difficult ride over the course of the next few months.
You say, Lord Heseltine, that it was all very well scripted and it was an impressive performance. That suggests that you're not quite sure that they really meant it.
No, you can't possibly suggest that. I think they did mean it. I think they must mean it, because they would have made the most awful misjudgment unless they were determined to give it every possible chance of success. After all, their reputations now hang on this deal, and having put their own personal credibility on the line, I'm absolutely sure that they will give it every conceivable effort they can. But politics is a very old profession, and it doesn't much change, as if you read Shakespeare you will know. They have got not only huge difficulties facing them economically, but once they do face them, the climate will be very, well, very stretching, to say the least of it. This will not be a popular coalition within a year or 18 months. And at that point, the strains will appear in both parties, and it will require great guts and great leadership to keep the show on the road.
Now, you know probably better than anybody else that there are also potential pitfalls, not just between the two parties, but within the Conservative Party too. How do you expect, and do you think it's realistic for David Cameron to be able to keep control of his backbenchers, many of whom are already really unhappy about the fact that he didn't go it alone?
Well, I think that if he'd gone it alone, and I thought that was a real possibility, it meant inevitably another election probably this October. There was no certainty by then that he would have increased his vote. He might have done, I think he probably could have done, but there was no guarantee. And so his backbenchers, first of all, they've been very widely consulted, and that was a very wise decision on David's part. But secondly, what is the alternative for them? They can precipitate an early general election, and the public will not like that. Now that public expectations have been risen so high by the joint leadership that we're seeing, for a group of people, wherever they come from either wing of the new coalition, to precipitate that coalition into a general election would be very unpopular. And the people behind it, I think, would bear a heavy responsibility that would bear on their own particular party. So I think that common sense, and I think also that awareness that the national interest does present an agenda which has got to be addressed, will actually see them through, certainly in the immediate future.
Lord Heseltine, we're just seeing some pictures of Philip Hammond arriving to hear how his career is going to work out. He, of course, was the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. That job has been taken by David Laws, a Liberal Democrat. So Philip Hammond, a wave there as he goes into Downing Street to learn what job he's going to get instead of Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Perhaps transport, that's one of the big jobs around the cabinet table that remains that we don't have information about yet, but Philip Hammond has gone in there to hear what will happen with his next career. Lord Heseltine, What do you think of having so many Liberal Democrats in such senior positions in the cabinet? I mean, it's not just a question that they've been handed out a few little jobs here and there. You have very, very senior posts indeed. Do you think that David Cameron's given too much?
I think he's given enough to make sure that he has the wholehearted commitment of the Liberal Democratic Party. He knows, we all know, that making this thing work is going to require persistence and skill. And if there was any feel on behalf of serious parts of the Liberal Democratic Party that they were a sort of bit player, a tag-on just to sort of keep the show on the road, it would make fragility even more central than it is bound to be. So building them in a sensible and mature way is obviously a part of David Cameron's strategy. I mean, I think you've got to keep saying to yourself, what should David Cameron have done other than what he did? He had one of two choices: to go it alone. Of course, there was the Lib Dem pact with Labour, but that I think was always unrealistic. So he could have tried to govern on his own, which would have been extremely difficult, and particularly so in the present economic circumstance. Or he could try to put his government onto a basis that was on rock, and the most rock-like basis he could find was a full and wholehearted commitment of coalition with the Lib Dems. Now, there'll be lots of people who say, well, God, I wish he hadn't done quite as much, or couldn't he have done it another way? All these questions are bound to be asked. But you are where you are. He's made the decisions. He's got the support of the parliamentary party. And that doesn't mean to say, and it never does mean, that every single one of them is signed up, because you never get that, no matter how united the party is. But he has got the overwhelming support, and I think huge goodwill. I think David Cameron has actually managed to, if you like, rise above party politics with the generosity of his offer, and I believe the sincerity of his offer. And we must now wait to see what happens. The problems will emerge when decisions have to be taken, not when speeches have to be made.
Lord Heseltine, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on BBC News and giving us the benefit of your years of experience. Now, right now, as we speak, some senior politicians are still inside Downing Street waiting to